Hey, how's it going, guys? Today I wanted to do a quick video on a new keyboard that I got, even though in my last video I did say that I was probably going to slow down with keyboards a little bit here and there. That didn't happen because big depresso, and I ended up buying a new keyboard. And that keyboard is the Keeb.io Nyquist. So just from the get-go, it is a split 50/60% ortholinear, however you want to see it. And yeah, this was a relatively cheap kit and something that I've wanted to try for a while. So yeah, let's just get into it. So rather than having unboxing footage here, DHL actually decided to crack open my package, inspect it and all that, and repack it. So I don't think me doing that would be very indicative of a normal unboxing experience. And these keyboards from Keeb.io, you can typically adjust a lot of different things. So I'm just going to be talking about my configuration here. And so to start, the bottom and top plates I have are the FR4 ones. I believe they have acrylic and stainless steel, but I personally think of all those FR4 is probably the best choice in terms of my preference for sound and feel. And I just don't like acrylic typically anyways. And I did get the acrylic middle piece. And I did just say that I don't like acrylic. That applies to this as well, but I don't really like having that big gap here where things can just kind of flow through. It is kind of cool here and there, but I find that having kind of a middle layer makes it feel more like a complete keyboard rather than a through-hole kit, which I believe the Nyquist actually started out as. So yeah, that's just something to note. And I do have mil-max sockets in this as well. That's just something I'm going to note. And this is revision 3. I think it's actually labeled 3.5 on the PCB itself. The main difference is, I believe, is just that it uses USB-C to connect the two halves instead of a 3.5 millimeter cable, which I personally thought was a cool feature of the previous versions, but whatever, I kind of understand why they'd use USB-C for this, so no real complaints. It just was cool, but I get it. Just quickly moving forward, let's talk about the build process of this board. The build process of this board was pretty straightforward. It's just another keyboard. I did mil-max it, which again, pretty straightforward. You just solder, done. But one thing to note is that because I'm not sure what kind of QC is done at Keeb.io, the PCBs were perfectly fine, but I bought mil-max sockets from Keeb.io at the same time with obviously the intent of putting those in this board, which I have. But on this side in particular, the sockets for the switch pins, or in this case mil-max sockets, were very tight. It wasn't too much of an issue on most areas, just really on the space bar here. I ended up having to actually shave the pad a little bit, which kind of sucks, but with this kind of PCB, I wasn't too worried because these boards, I believe they support Alps and chalk type switches as well. So a lot of times you'll have like these sockets where the pins go through with the pad shared among the different types of switches that you can put in. So if I did mess up the inner portion of the MX pad, I could literally just drag the solder over to the rest of the pad and the switch would most likely work perfectly fine. One other thing to note is that this does use north-facing switches. I don't like north-facing switches. I've been very vocal about that. I don't think any kind of custom keyboard really should be using north-facing switches because, first of all, I find that a lot of people in the keyboard hobby aren't really going to be using per key lighting. And a lot of these folks also like having nice keycaps, which for most people, the first, I guess, manufacturer you think of as GMK, and they make cherry profiles. So north facing, there's going to be some interference. It's just the reality of the situation. And in terms of lighting, there are also SMD LEDs on the bottom, which provides kind of an underglow effect. It's a bit iffy on this board because this is just clear acrylic, not frosted, which I would have liked to see. But it's there if you want it. A couple other things to note is that with the acrylic middle piece, you get different kind of standoff pieces or screw sockets. I don't really know what to call them, which are different length from the normal ones. I believe these are shorter. But one thing to note is that this middle post, maybe you're supposed to leave it out if you have the acrylic middle piece, but I chose to put one in, and just for rigidity's sake. But if you see here, these don't actually run the full, I guess, height of this acrylic piece. So towards the middle here, the plate and the bottom and top plate actually bow in. So that's just something to note. I might actually end up taking that out in the future. And another thing to note is that this doesn't come with any case feet. These are feet bonbons that I provided myself. I went to Home Depot, bought 16 for about $4, kind of slapped them on here, and I did run it without them for a while. The board sliding around wasn't a huge issue, but one thing that I really didn't like is that because these screws actually poke out a little bit, if you're on a mat, you will have a scratchy feeling. If you're on a solid surface, you might end up scratching that surface. So yeah, if you're gonna buy this board, make sure to have some additional feet that you can slap on. And keep in mind that you do most likely want 8 rather than just 4 like you would on a normal keyboard, because you do have 2 halves to worry about. So yeah. Apart from that, I do have DSA 2049 on this keyboard. It is a uniform keycap set, and I did get this from Pimp My Keyboard. I bought these because Tay Keyboards did a video with these, and I thought the color scheme is really cool. And of course, because it is a uniform set, you can put whichever cap wherever you want, which really helps with ortholinear sets. Because in my previous video, I mentioned, at least I think I mentioned, that Pimp My Keyboard's other set, even though it's an ortholinear set, it doesn't match what I think most people are going to run for this kind of form factor, where it's a 5x12 rather than 4x12 ortho. So yeah, just have a little bit more flexibility with uniform set. Anyways, time for a quick typing test. So typing impressions. I overall really enjoyed using this board for the past week or so. I plan on using it further because this was my favorite layout to begin with. But having the ability to separate them, angle them a bit, made me like it even more. And one thing that I still have to get used to a bit is the keys towards the middle. On the Preonic, for example, I'd have a habit of kind of crossing over once in a while. Maybe I'll type Y with my left hand or something like that. But having used the SK Ergo for a bit, which is a pseudo Alice layout board, I did have to get used to that a bit. So I'm getting better. I'm not quite there, but it's something that I believe that I can get used to with a bit more time. But yeah, having the ability to angle the board, split it up, makes it a lot more comfortable for me to type on. And some people might say, oh, it's because you're on ortholinear. Ortholinear boards are just typically smaller than their normal staggered counterparts, which, yes, they are smaller, but the distance between the keys is essentially the same. So not really a valid argument if you ask me. But it's more so that because of how crowded, how dense the keys are packed together, you end up with your wrists kind of very close together and kind of bending your wrist like that. Whereas if you can move the halves apart, you can kind of angle from your elbow or your shoulder. So it's a lot more comfortable. And wrists are pretty delicate. So want to take care of these when you can. And some people might look at split keyboards and think, how do you type on that? It looks weird. It freaks me out. And those people will also look at a keyboard like this, like a normal basic office ergonomic keyboard, and look at that and be like, hey, this board is a little bit weird, but it's better for me. So yeah, just something to note. So although the two halves are separate, and yes, it does look different, functionally it's not that much different from a normal board that has slight ergonomic features. So yeah, I do think split keyboards are a lot more comfortable than I ever thought a keyboard could be. I was very comfortable on a normal one-piece board, but switching over made it a lot more comfortable than I thought it could be. But just very brief comparison to the, say, Preonic, I like this board more. It uses FR4 plates. Well, you can pick what material you want, but in my case, FR4 plates rather than stainless steel. I don't like the sound of stainless steel plates. I don't really like it. And these are VIA compatible. I think I previously mentioned this, but any modern board should be VIA compatible, and especially something like the Preonic and Plank. Those things are kind of big deal boards. They're like mass manufactured, right? So you'd think that they'd make it a little bit more consumer friendly by allowing people to use VIA on it. Not the case, at least not as far as I know. And aside from that, the Preonic does have a weird chime thing when you plug it in, when you power it on. This board, like most boards, don't have anything like that. And yes, I know technically you can remove that from the Preonic, but it requires you to actually go into like the QMK stuff, and it's not something you can just change on configurator, or if it was VIA compatible, that's not something you'd be able to change there either, most likely. So yeah, I like this board a lot more than the Preonic, and like every other review I do, this board will probably stay on my desk for at least the next month. But yeah, I actually like this board a lot, and it is a lot like my previous favorite board. Just this board does feel a little bit cheap. If someone made a like more premium version of this, I would jump on it right away, and that would probably be like my stay on my desk for years board. But this does feel a little bit cheap. It is 200 Canadian dollars, so can't really blame him. Overall, just quickly wrapping up, I think split boards are great. If you have a friend that has one, try it out. Ask them if you can borrow it for like even just a couple days, because I think the comfort is incredible. And yeah, ortholinear, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't, right? But I just really like that. It's a lot more compact. And yeah, having kind of the flexibility to move things around. Like the other day I ate Wendy's, had the fries in between the two halves. Just having that kind of flexibility was kind of cool, being able to do that. And yeah, the only kind of iffy thing I'd say is that the PCB issue where I had to scrape the pad, keycap compatibility, but that just comes with ortholinears in general. And yeah, other than that, no real complaints, especially considering the price. I do, again, hope that someone makes a premium type of split ortholinear, but with how niche that kind of category is, ortholinear and split, I don't see that really happening anytime soon. I'd love to design it, but I honestly don't want to put that time into learn that stuff. Not at this time, at least. But anyways, that's going to wrap up this video. Hopefully it was helpful to some extent, and at least somewhat interesting. If you have any questions about anything in this video, just leave a comment below and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. I'm sure I've missed a couple of things here and there, so yeah, I'll try to fill in the gaps through the comments. But anyways, that's gonna do it. I love this board. It's gonna sit on my desk for at least the next month or so. But yeah, that's gonna wrap up this video and I'll catch you guys in the next one.